Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. This is our not usual scheduled meeting not Friday scheduled meeting of the RTC for Washoe County. It is May 20th at 9 a.m. And Madam Clerk, can I have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Ron Smith.
Can we-
Vaughn Hartung.
Here.
Neoma Jordan.
Here.
Bob Lucy.
Here.
Oscar Delgado. Here. Lee Gibson.
Here.
Dale Ferguson. Here. And Christina Swallow. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Delgado, since you're already standing, would you just lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir?
Of course. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Nice to see you this morning. All right, and it's nice to see all these beautiful smiley faces on a bright Monday morning. All right, with that, we are going to special recognitions. So, Mr. Gibson.
Mr. Chairman, we'd like to have the recognition of the RTC of Washoe County, Reno, and Sparks governments for support, participation, and sponsorship of the Transforming Local Government Conference. Kate, you going to come up? Kate Thomas, Assistant County Manager, is going to talk to us.
Good morning,
morning,
members
Paul.
of the board. I am here representing, as mentioned, Reno Sparks and Washoe County. We were thrilled to have RTC as a primo sponsor for the Transforming Local Government Conference. Michael has provided some interesting photos for all of you to enjoy while we give you special recognition. I wanted to note that this conference that was held April 9th through the 12th of last month was a resounding success. We had feedback from our local participants. We had feedback from all over the country. 600 people attended this conference, and we're thrilled with the level of quality sponsors. With the tours, RTC gave an innovation tour and highlighted the electric bus program. Also, the bus rapid transit project along Prater and 4th, as well as the upcoming Virginia project. So RTC was heavily involved in the process and as a sponsor, so we were so thankful for that. I wanted to briefly just call out and thank a couple of people. We had the partnership of RTC largely because our chair, Commissioner Hartung, was very instrumental in getting that sponsorship for us. We appreciate that tremendously. We thought that our Innovative Transportation Commission was a great way to show off our region, and it sure worked. I wanted to thank Commissioner Lucy as well. He was instrumental in helping us get some sponsors that were very pertinent to the level of innovation that we wanted to highlight for our region as well. So that was really great. And then lastly, we could not have done this without the participation of your own Michael Moreno, who was fantastic in being a partner, not only with this, but I've partnered with him on many other efforts, bringing Urban Land Institute to town. And he is such a resource for pinpointing what needs to happen as far as highlighting our local successes, pointing out things we have done differently and collaboratively, and I can't thank him enough for his participation. So with that, again, thank you for your support, and we wanted to just formally recognize you on behalf of all three jurisdictions.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Any comments from the board? Seeing none, all right. Thank you. All right, we are on to approval agenda. Looking for no changes, Director?
Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to suggest is when you approve the agenda, staff would recommend taking items 6.1 and 6.2 together.
Okay.
Is that correct, Mr. Counselor? Okay.
All right. So
Motion with the amendments, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion from Commissioner Hartung, second by Commissioner Jordan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we are on to public input. I have one individual signed in this morning for public comment this morning. I have a Lori Rodriguez. Good morning, Ms. Rodriguez.
Good morning. For the record, Lori Rodriguez. I would like to read to you an edited version of a proposal I presented to the NDOT board on May 13th. The addition of a third lane to the I-80 has been a topic of discussion, but the real issue is how to move people to Trick. I would like to propose a monorail. Since we are targeting one specific location, this would make perfect sense. Elevated trains using the latest technology are non-polluting, fast, and quiet. In some areas, they are being built on the sides of and in the centers of its existing freeways. Passenger cabs can be added as the demand grows, and the trains are proving to be profitable. I see this project in 3 phases, with the first being from Sparks to Trick. The second would be from Fernley to Trick. The third would be from Fallon to Fernley. Stations with adequate parking would be needed, just as airports have now, and revised bus routes to accommodate riders would be nice. The present employers at Trick already have 94 shuttles in operation. I envision these vans to be centered at the Trick station to ferry people to their workplaces. This would reduce the operating costs for the employers, encouraging them to keep the van pools. Using the approximate $400 million budget projected for the third lane build, I think a minuscule amount could be allocated for a feasibility study of a monorail. Many of the major costs of building these systems is literally moving mountains. We don't have that problem with the corridor. Also, construction companies should have verifiable experience building elevated trains as a requirement to submit a bid. We need to start making changes now, because if we don't start now, then when? It is so easy to fall back on the same old, same old. If countries all over the world are building these, so can we. I am speaking about this idea at the 9 different county commission and city council meetings in the area to see if there's interest for this endeavor. We have nothing to lose by researching this mode of travel and everything to gain. My original presentation also included high-speed train proposals for the I-11 and the I-15, but today I am speaking specifically about the I-80. If you would support a feasibility study for a monorail, I encourage you to let NDOT know. You can also contact Kate Wilson directly in the Lieutenant Governor's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Is anybody else wishing to speak under general public comment? All right, seeing no other public comment, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. We are on to item 2.2. Mr. Director.
Mr. Chairman, item 2.2 is to accept the monthly summary report for the Technical, Citizens, Multimodal, and Regional Road Impact Fee Advisory Committees. The reports are in order for your approval.
All right, any further discussion by the board? Looking for a motion? I have a motion by Commissioner Hartung.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We are on to our consent agenda. Mr. Gibson.
Mr. Chairman, item 3 is the consent items. These are routine items related to the administration and management of the RTC. A couple of highlights I'd like to point out. Item 3.12 would authorize the procurement of engineering professional services for the design of the Lemon Drive project. This is a follow-on to the report last month where we talked about the design concept and scope issues that we would be encountering on that. This item will give us the authorization to move forward with the procurement for the consultant and begin that design effort. With that, Mr. Chair, staff believes all the consent items are in order for approval.
Fantastic. All right. Any discussion or items from the board would like to hear individually or looking for a motion?
Second with a discussion, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Which discussion on what items?
Just
sir?
3.12, a thanks to RTC's director for moving this forward and staff. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to getting this study done. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Awesome. All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Jardin, a second by Commissioner Hartung. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving right along, we are on to our public hearing. So I will open the public hearing. This is item 4.1. This is discussion and recommendation to approve the RTC fiscal 2020 final budget. And we have Ms. Haddock with us this morning. How are you? Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Commissioners. Stephanie Haddock, Director of Finance for the record. I'm going to give you a brief overview of our final budget. So we started our budget process in February with our director's retreat. From there, we developed the tentative budget, and we submitted that to the Department of Taxation on April 12th. We also presented the tentative budget to all of our RTC advisory committees. They recommended approval with no comments. Today is a public hearing for the budget approval, final budget approval, and once approved, we'll submit that to the Department of Taxation by May 31st. So our fiscal year 2020 total revenues are coming to be at 221 million, 221.6 million. Our largest funding sources are our fuel tax at 92 million. We have federal funding at 65 million, sales tax 34 million, regional road impact fee cash at 5 million, passenger fares at 6 million, and miscellaneous revenue at 9 million. Our miscellaneous revenue includes road project reimbursements, investment income, advertising, and lease income. Total expenditures for the fiscal year 2020 budget are $222.7 million. RTC has 3 major programs, the larger of which is our street and highway program. Budgeted expenditures are $101 million. The street and highway program also includes our debt service, but our debt service I showed as a separate wedge here at $25.5 million. We have public transportation expenditures budgeted for $81 million, and our Metropolitan Planning Organization program, or what we call our MPO, $4.7 million.
Ms. Haddock,
Yes,
Commissioner Hartung.
I just have a fast question.
sure.
Stephanie, just, does public transportation program, does that include things like the Virginia Street project as a whole?
Yes, I'm going to go into more detail if you
Okay.
just give me 2 more slides.
Okay,
We're going to start with the street and highway program and the fiscal year 2020 budget. So we're going to carry forward from fiscal year 19 approximately an $89 million beginning fund balance. That's actually net of $32 million in debt service excuse me, reserve, which is not available for spending. So our total projected revenues for this program are $135 million, which includes $92 million in fuel tax. That's a 6% increase over the prior year. Federal funding of $19 million, which includes mostly our recently approved Small Starts grant for the Virginia Street project. $2.8 million in sales tax. That represents 25% of the 1/8 that can be flexed for either road program or public transportation. Then we have, as I mentioned, $5 million in impact fees, and then other income of $6 million. Most of that is $4 million of road project reimbursements. Our total program expenditures are budgeted at $137 million. We have $25.5 million in the congestion and capacity improvements. That's going to be RTC's Spaghetti Bowl Express project contribution, North Valley's project, and the Lemon Drive project in that category. $46 million in mobility. That includes the Virginia Street project and the Audie Wells design. We have $23 million in annual pavement preservation and road rehab program. That's our regular reconstruction and slurry seal projects that we do through various roads throughout the region. And then the debt service, as I mentioned, at $25 million. And that's actually a $2.8 million savings over our prior year and going forward in all the future years due to the recent bond refunding we did. So we estimate at the end of the year, we'll have about $84 million in ending fund balance that will carry forward into fiscal year 2021, and that's to continue our already previously approved road projects that are already currently in construction or currently in design. So on the public transportation program, fiscal year 2020 budget, we anticipate beginning fund balance around $21 million. Total projected revenues of $83 million, which includes sales tax of $31 million. Again, 75% of the 1/8. It's also a 4% increase over the prior year. Federal funding of $43 million. That includes $30 million in federal money for public transportation capital projects, and then $10 million of the Small Starts Virginia Street grant. Passenger fares at $6 million. That's actually an 8% decrease over the prior year due to our ridership decreases. State funding at $2.5 million. That includes our employee trip reduction program funding and Medicaid funding for access rides. Our other income at $900,000. Again, that's investment income, advertising income, and lease income. Total projected expenditures for the program are $81 million. Our ride operating costs are budgeted at $37 million. That's a 19% increase over the prior year. That's mostly due to the turnkey contract that we just did with Keolis, increases for that. We also have some service increases because we now have the full implementation of our Lincoln Line on the BRT for the 4th and Prater corridor. Ride capital is at $31 million. That will include funding for 19 new electric buses and chargers. Access operating costs are $10.5 million. That's an 8% increase over last year, again, for our turnkey contractor increases. And we're also including $1 million for a microtransit demonstration service. Access capital is at $3 million, and that includes funding for 17 new paratransit replacement vans. So we anticipate at the end of the year, we'll have an ending fund balance of around $23 million that will carry forward into fiscal year 2021. So the last program is our Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO. Our fiscal year 2020 budget includes planning revenue of about $3.2 million. That's primarily federal funding that's provided to MPOs for regional planning. Oh, just noticed that from my angle, that slide looks terrible with that color, I guess. It includes $60,000 for shared services agreement with TMRPA. We have $1.7 million in proposed planning studies. Some of the major studies we'll do this year is the RTP update, mobility study, the affordable housing study, UNR area transportation study, South Meadows regional transportation study, Eagle Canyon improvements and extension study. The expenditures also include $250,000 for transit safety and a messaging campaign. So in summary, we have a balanced budget and good financial condition for fiscal year 2020. Very stable economic conditions for RTC to operate. We've had 8 years of sales tax growth, 11 years of fuel tax growth. Washoe County has very low unemployment. Actually, we're at 3.1%. The nation is at 3.8%. Continued job growth. Washoe County is actually outpacing not only Southern Nevada, but also the U.S. Our continued job growth is at 5.8%. The U.S. is at 1.7%. Personal income growth is also up 5.8% over last year. RTC is a lean organization. We only have 71 employees. RTC creates jobs because 95% of our revenues are invested in the private sector, as we do most of our business through private contracting for construction, consulting, and all the other services that we provide. And before I take any questions, I'd just like to take a moment to thank all the directors and their staff. They do a lot of work to contribute to this budget. And I also want to take a moment to recognize my staff that does major work on this budget. I have a few of them in the audience. If Sharon and Yelena could please stand up. Sharon Britt does the capital budget, and Yelena and her staff, Linda and Nelia couldn't be here today, do the operating budget. So I just wanted you to have a little recognition for my staff. They do a fantastic job, and I appreciate them so much.
Good job, ladies.
So with that, I can take your questions,
Thank you,
Mr. Chair,
if you have any.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to add 2 caveats to the presentation, or 1 caveat. I'd remind the commission this is an authorizing document. You will be seeing each of the appropriation action items in the frame of contracts related to our projects come forward throughout the year. So we'll see maybe some wiggle room, if you will. I think in the past, the wiggle room has always been towards savings, as we are, I like to say, my staff is very efficient in the delivery of these programs and projects. And I'd like to offer my thanks to the staff, to the finance department for all of their great work. Not only have they had to deal with this budget, which is always fun, but as you will learn later in my director's report, and then in item 6.1 and 6.2, there have been some other things that have been occupying our time lately. So anyway.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gibson. All right, any questions for Ms. Haddock? Commissioner Jordan.
Thank you very much. Great job, always. You do a fantastic job, and your staff. Wonderful presentation, and I know it's a lot of work, so congratulations. The 11 years of fuel tax growth, the 6% for this past year, was there a slide that showed what that dollar amount was?
Yeah, $92 million.
So the 6% increase, what equated to 92 mil.
Yes.
What month do we start the budget process for the next year?
In February and March.
So February, March. So
That's
we
when we
will
start
start it
looking.
this next February, March for the next fiscal year?
Yes.
Okay, and I will put it on my future agenda items for commissioners as well. But I would like to talk about the fuel tax as it relates to local roads.
Okay.
And that allocation. I know it was changed a few years back, but I would like to have that discussion as we begin the next budget cycle.
Absolutely, we'll make sure that happens.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Stephanie, I see that we'll forget the capital costs. We'll just throw those out the window on transit. Essentially, transit itself, when you add access and you add ride together, we've got $47.5 million of cost. And essentially, 6 million in revenues, if I'm
Yeah.
reading this correctly.
Well, yes, that is,
But, I mean-
it comes from the
from-
actual operation of those services. Yes.
Correct. And this is not a castigation or a suggestion we need to raise fares to the degree where we're net zero. That's not the question. The question comes back to, this is not so much for you, these are telling numbers, and I think it's time that we sit down and we look at the routes, we see how we can increase ridership, how do we maybe even flex routes during the middle of the day. You guys have heard me say this lots of times, where seniors, as an example, do not want to ride during commuter hours, and commuters are not obviously riding during the hours that I would need to go and have a doctor's appointment. So maybe we can flex these things to increase our ridership and not so much increase our fares, but just increase the ridership so that we're getting more bang for the money that we're spending. And I think that I'd love Mr. Gibson to see the numbers, the ridership numbers at some point, and really dive deep into this and see if there's a way that we can do more with the same amount of operating capital. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just add, with Keolis coming on board July 1, we are planning a commission workshop, I believe in late July, where we're actually going to sit down with our new contractor and go through a number of the items you've raised, and let's start getting at this more aggressively. And then under my director's report, I'll also talk about another item related to that. So,
Great. Commissioner Delgado.
Thank you, Chairman. Quick question, what's our ending fund balance overall for the organization? Sorry, I didn't see, I don't know if you had it in the PowerPoint or not. I just saw that you broke down certain budgets, certain programs, but just wanted overall the organization.
141 million,
So 141 is what we're ending fund balance, okay.
yes.
That's all I need to know, thank you.
Okay.
Mayor Smith?
No, I'm
No
good.
questions? All right. Ms. Haddock, I appreciate you and your staff putting together the very robust budget. I don't think people quite understand all the time and energy that goes into putting our budget together and how complex it can be from year to year. And as the director pointed out, not only is it just a fixed budget, it has a lot of fixed costs. It's a moving target quite often throughout the year, and takes constant attention and understanding by your staff and your counterparts. So thank you for all the work that you've done, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, looking for a motion at this time to accept, I'm sorry, public comment. I do not have anybody signed in for public comment. Do I have any public comment wishing to speak on the budget at this time? Seeing no public input, I will bring it back to the board and looking for a motion to approve the final budget as drafted.
Move to approve.
I have a motion, Mayor Smith, second by Commissioner Hartung. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Gibson, we are on to items 5.1, which is the director's report.
Mr. Chairman, related to Commissioner Hartung's question about operability and flexibility of transit, I'm pleased to report Assembly Bill 270 has cleared all the committees and is awaiting a floor vote this week. As you all will recall, AB 270 authorizes RTCs in counties under 700,000 to dispose of certain property, which is our bill that will allow us to sell property to other entities for other public purposes. But the bill also was amended late or during the session to include the authority to operate microtransit. So we are looking forward to that bill clearing the Senate this week and on to Governor Sisolak for signature and enactment into law. I also want to do a shout out to Assemblywoman Sarah Peters. Sarah has just been was the sponsor, and not just a sponsor, she was a fabulous champion for this bill, and I appreciate all of her help. There is a letter with an FTA logo on it at your spots. I'm pleased to report last Tuesday, the FTA approved our letter of no prejudice. A letter of no prejudice is a financial acknowledgement that we will get the grant and that we're clear to go forward with the expenditure of funds and be reimbursed by the grant later on. So with this milestone achieved, we'll be moving on under item 6.1 and 6.2 to start the construction of Virginia Street. So that is excellent news. I want to do a shout out to our lobbying team back in Washington for all of their help. I also want to do an acknowledgement to the Virginia Street team and all of the engineers, planners, Mr. Wilbrecht, Ms. Cummings, who's not here today, Sharon Brett, are three people just I want to highlight who've been very, very helpful in getting all of that done. Want to move on to Vision Zero. The Vision Zero Truckee Meadows website is now live, and this website features data that has been collected to date on pedestrian and motorist safety tips and other useful information. We continue to move forward with our Vision Zero efforts. Last Wednesday, I saw MJ, there she is, she's out on the, I think that's the west side of the building. Last Wednesday, Officer MJ McLeod with Washoe County School District and the Safe Routes to School Coordinator held a Tour de Safety event in celebration of Bike to School Week during Bike Month. So the event partnered students, parents, and staff from Cold Springs Middle School. Following a safety assembly where Officer McLeod discussed bicycle safety and rules of the road everywhere, everyone gathered to ride on local neighborhood streets and use bike lanes to ride to 7-Eleven, where students all enjoyed celebratory Slurpees. The Washoe County School Police and Washoe County Sheriff participated with a motorcade, closing intersections and riding along. We have a video of the event, is that right? No? We do? Michael shaking yes, and Denise looks puzzled. Okay. Can you run that for us?
Very
Okay. Last, a couple of more items. The June board meeting we were going to hold, it looks like will be held on Thursday, June 20th at 1 p.m. here at the County Commission. And then last but not least on your agenda today are two items related to the fiscal year agency performance rating as well as our 2018 annual report. And we'll have a discussion when we get to those items. With that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my director's report.
great. You know what, MJ, I have you signed in for public comment, but I want to welcome you down. Officer MJ Cloud is a true advocate for safe routes to school. She has been doing this continuously since I've been elected to office and has been just an amazing ambassador for children and pedestrians alike. And so with that, I'd like to offer her a chance to come up and speak a little bit to the whole program. Welcome, MJ.
Thank you, and I appreciate being able to take this moment to express all the thanks for the support. We had a conglomerate of the City of Reno, the City of Sparks, RTC, NDOT, elected officials, Parks and Rec, and then other community members that helped make Bike Week and Bike Month so successful. Because of RTC's funding, we were able to deliver bicycles to every middle school. That bicycle at each middle school will be raffled off in a way to encourage more students to continue to bike to and from school. Several of the Washoe County schools were signed up to participate in what we call a Rack 'em Up contest. The winners from those contests will be announced later this week, and they'll be rewarded for their participation. We had two highlighted events. One was being the Tour de Slurpee, and the other was called Our Ride for Reading. Northern Nevada brought the Ride for Reading from Vegas approximately 4 years ago. And this year, we had over 30 people. We gathered at the city of Sparks, and they participated by riding all together to Ardmore Park, where they picked up backpacks full of books. These books were donated by Spread the Word Nevada, and they were given to the students at Kate Smith Elementary School. The benefit of this was that at Kate Smith, those students got to take that book home. And it's rare now to be able to find an age-appropriate book within each home. So every student at Kate Smith was able to pick out a book. And our route that we chose was down Prater to Fourth, and that was also to highlight and show appreciation for all of the improvement projects that have been done in that area. The Cold Springs Middle Tour to Safety that you already spoke about. We also wanted to thank NDOT because they provided those nice t-shirts, and we did have over 220 students that were actually on bicycles. The reason it was safe is because Washoe County Motors and the school police motors were closing off the intersections. If you see videos where the students are more than 2 across, or if they're outside of the bike lanes, not stopping at a stop sign, those students had already had a safety assembly, recognizing you're able to ride this way only because of the motorcade holding traffic in all directions, and with the understanding that when they're riding on their own, they'll stay in the bike lanes and use the rules of the road. So we calculated approximately 500 bikes during this week, and that is easily double what we normally have. All of these efforts are to create change. If there are more students biking and walking, then there's less parent vehicle drop-off. With less parent vehicles, that means less emissions. And it also means the less chance that there's a vehicle versus pedestrian accident in the school zones. Events like these bring awareness to bicycle and pedestrian safety, and Safe Routes to School is just one part of doing their thing to support 0 accidents back to the 0 fatalities. The only amount that's acceptable is 0. So our program is funded through RTC, and again, I'd like to thank you, and I will continue to work hard for the safety of our students, and in the future, have them make that choice to bike and ride.
Great. Thank you, MJ. I really appreciate all the time and effort you put into this for the students and all the, everybody in the community. You know, and it does take a joint effort between RTC and Washoe County and Reno and Sparks to really get these things off the ground. I think of a lot of the projects that we're proud of here at the RTCU, especially the complete street projects that allow for those safe bike lanes, and a number of projects that we have done throughout the cities of Sparks and Reno have made it much more applicable for people to come and accessible for people to ride safely throughout the community. And but it's through education that you're doing with the children at the very beginning that makes it lifelong for them. So really appreciate all the time and energy you put into that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hartung.
Yes, MJ, sorry.
No,
I just wanted to commend you on the safety. I saw all the kids wearing helmets. You know, that's something that we, like safety belts, never wore in the 60s when we were riding bicycles. It was just one of the, it wasn't, those of you who were around in the 60s, how many of you remember using a helmet when you rode your bicycle?
MJ, I think this is really what Commissioner Hartung was saying. He'd like a helmet.
That I can wear all the time.
Yes, sir.
I need it always. But I also wanted to commend you on the Tour de Slurpee, things that never change. Those were great when we were kids, and they're still great now, and what a clever name. That's I love that, and I hope you continue that. So thank you for your interaction and your participation, and look forward to growing this exponentially. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Can I add one final comment?
Absolutely.
This year was more, the Ride for Reading was simplified into the city of Sparks. Next year, we're looking forward to challenging the city of Reno and their councilmen in riding as well, because we had not only had Mayor Smith there participating, but we also had several councilmen that rode along in the Ride for Reading. So next year, we are going to throw that out to make sure we get some more councilmen to ride on that.
Thank you, officer. Appreciate it. Challenge accepted, yeah. Delgado's got some sweet bike shirts, I've seen them. Yes, you can, yeah, at home, yes, you can ride your Peloton at home.
Without a helmet.
Without a helmet. The one thing I do want to point out is, I also want to point out from the Director Gibson's report is how important the letter of no prejudice from KJ Williams and the FTA, this is unbelievable, and their ability to, our staff and the FTA to realize the complexity of our projects, but the safe and ability for us to deliver those projects within a reasonable time and within, for the safe and secure routes that we try to put here in Reno and Sparks all the time. So I really want to point out thank you to the FTA for their continued confidence in the RTC, and also to our staff back in DC for all the help allowing us, and our staff here in Reno that helped carry this through. So thank you very much for that. This is huge. 45.7 million is nothing to laugh at. So thank you. All right, with that, seeing no further, Mr. Gibson, we are on to the federal report.
Mr. Chairman, the federal report prepared by Cardinal Infrastructure and Thompson Coburn is in your backup. A couple of highlights I'd like to make. First off, we have communicated our policy priorities to the delegation. Those really focus on changes to the capital investment grant program, including fully funding that program, restoring funding to the bus and bus facility program as we grow out of the Virginia Street initiative. We're going to be looking at our bus and bus facility issues next, incentivizing public-private partnerships. That's a particularly important one from my perspective. In Nevada, there are no public employees who operate public transportation in the two biggest systems. We have actually very, very creative and innovative public-private partnerships to operate transit. We want the federal government to recognize those partnerships and work with us to perhaps do a better job in helping deliver innovation, especially in the arena of autonomous vehicles and new technologies. We want to see, one of the frustrations we had, not frustrations, one of the challenges we had with the FTA was just the resources available for grantees. We appreciate all the hard work of the FTA in moving the CIG grant forward, but of course we have other grants and other initiatives with the FTA. We want to see them fully staffed and fully up to speed to help deliver the program. The BUILD grant, this is the old Tiger program. There is a notice of funding opportunity out. We're looking at the Pyramid Highway project that was just recently cleared, and I believe we're going to do that in partnership with the Nevada Department of Transportation. There's been some changes and additions to the FTA personnel. So they have a new administrator or new associate administrator for government relations and communications. We're working with those folks, especially as we look towards a groundbreaking. We'll talk more about that maybe on 6.1. With that, there was a little meeting between the president and some congressional leaders on a $2 trillion infrastructure bill. I would not hold your breath, but hopefully there will be some further discussions. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions from the board in regards to the federal report? One thing I'd like to point out that I think is really important in the BUILD grant, the discussion is that with the new notice of funding opportunity, there are new regulations that came out for opportunity zones 2 or 3 weeks ago that allow for now with the relaxed regulations that infrastructure can be paid for through in an opportunity zone, and it qualifies in an opportunity zone. So, and we're very fortunate here in Northern Nevada that a good portion of Sparks and Reno fall within opportunity zones, also with East Truckee River Canyon. So infrastructure can be paid for in a public-private partnership and qualify for opportunity zone basis, step up in basis, and also tax deferral under the 10-year program. So new things that are out there. So when you're having those discussions with individuals, opportunity zones do work for infrastructure. So roads, pipelines, those things, we were very fortunate. And we spoke with the president, the administration's council on economic development, Representative Scott Turner, who is now the Director of Economic Forum for Policy for them. And Mr. Turner will be trying to visit Northern Nevada and look at opportunities to help push some of those public-private partnerships as it pertains to infrastructure. So things to think about. So really interesting stuff right now. Opportunities abound in regards to helping build infrastructure here in Northern Nevada. So with that, seeing nothing further, we will move on and then on to our NDOT report. Ms. Swallow, Director Swallow.
Good morning. Good morning. It's great to be here. I always enjoy coming here, and I enjoy being up here up north. I've been a bit bummed I haven't been able to take part in Bike Month yet, but I'm looking forward. Hopefully, it doesn't rain tomorrow. In biking to the bus and taking the regional connector down to NDOT. So. I tell my team you don't have to do it every day, but if you consider doing it once a week, it'll dramatically change our system. And so I am trying to model the way on that. So, all right. So my first slide, I wanted to talk a little bit about a transportation planning effort that we have going on the North McCarran Boulevard Safety Management Plan. This is a study that we're doing along the 6.5-mile corridor from Summit Ridge Drive to 395. In this corridor, we've seen significant crashes over the last 5 years, roughly 724 crashes from 2013 to 2017. In there were 6 fatalities, 478 injuries, and 394 property damage only crashes. In total of those crashes, of the 724, 11 were pedestrian crashes, 6 were bicycle crashes, and 20 were motorcycle crashes. So it is a safety area, an area that's of safety concern to us. And we're looking at trying to figure out what we need to do to make the corridor safer for all users. We also recognize that this is a corridor that sees a lot of pedestrian bike traffic given its location in the valley and proximity to recreational areas. So as we look towards addressing these concerns, we had an open house on May 1st where we got a lot of good public feedback that we're going to take into account as we start to look at finalizing the report this summer. The next project I wanted to briefly update you on is the North Valleys project, the US 395 North Valleys project. We did a study, the Reno Freeway Traffic Study. It was completed last summer, and it revealed that, as I'm sure I'm not telling any of you if you drive this corridor, that US 395 between Stead and McCarran currently is not operating at a good level of service, and growth projections show that by 2040 we'll be experiencing gridlock on that corridor. So we need to figure out something to do to alleviate that congestion. We have a 2-phase project that we're in the process of working on. The first phase is from Clear Acre to Lemon Drive. There's a lot on that slide to process, but up in the top left you can see the phase 1 proposal. So we'll be adding 1 additional general purpose lane southbound between McCarran and Lemon Drive. We'll be constructing auxiliary merging lanes between the freeway ramps in both northbound and southbound. There is a diverging diamond interchange that will be constructed at Lemon to replace the existing bridge carrying Parr and Adini Boulevard. And we'll be constructing a braided freeway ramp along US 395 between the Panther Valley on-ramp and Golden Valley Road. We anticipate construction to start in 2022, and we're anticipating it'll be a 3-year construction process at roughly $90 million. Phase 2, we're anticipating construction to be 3 years behind phase 1, starting in as early as 2025. It'll be a $10 to $20 million project, and it will be adding a general purpose lane both north and southbound between Lemon Drive and Stead Boulevard. So we're working on addressing the concerns out there as fast as we can and with the resources we have. All right, something that's going on today. So I told you a couple of future-looking projects. Something that's going on really right now is we are looking at finishing up a project that we did last year through the Spaghetti Bowl. And so what we'll be doing is we'll be doing some resurfacing of the lanes between Mill Street and Parr Boulevard. Mostly this will be occurring between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. Sundays through Thursdays, just like we're doing on the I-80 West corridor from California State Line to Keystone. So During this time, we will maintain at least one interstate lane open in each direction while they're doing the paving work. The highway speeds will be reduced to 55 miles per hour during daytime hours and 45 miles per hour during construction. Periodic ramp closures and lane closures will continue through early June with detours available, and no 2 consecutive ramps will be closed at one time. Just so you know, this is one of the things that we're doing as we get ready to do the Spaghetti Bowl renovations and those North Valley improvements. It's just trying to make sure that we're moving people forward through the area with good pavement condition, because pavement condition actually can lead to crashes. So anything we can do to improve the condition while we're working on the other projects helps. All right, I-580. There's a federal requirement, There's a federal requirement that interstates be numbered as interstates, and as a result, we are getting ready to renumber 580. 580's numbering starts actually at the California state line on US 395 currently and moves north. But now that the 580's been completed, we need to renumber it to conform to federal requirements. I actually asked my team about this, and I said, why is this such a big deal? They're like, it's a big deal. And then I remembered that when we have these conversations, you guys refer to me like to exit numbers, not street names, which is not something that I'm accustomed to. So it is a big deal, and we need to make sure that we're giving proper notice to everybody that this is changing, because it is going to change. So the numbering will now start at Carson Boulevard in Carson, and then head north to Reno. The numbering changing will start this summer. We anticipate that Carson through the Washoe Valley will be changing this summer, and then Washoe Valley to the Spaghetti Bowl, those changes will happen in the fall. We are working with the emergency responders and trying to make sure everybody has adequate notice, so that as they're talking about exit numbers and milepost numbers, that they're aware that those are changing and they can update any communication materials they have accordingly. A quick legislative update. Good news on our end. Both of our bills have been passed and signed by the governor. Most importantly, this change, the biggest change probably to the Valley, would be the retention rates that we do with our contracting community, which they were fully supportive of, so that has been passed. We have 2 other bills that are not ours, but that we are working and helping on. One of them is SB 395. The intent of this bill initially was to add tow vehicles to the move over law. We've also added in our freeway service patrol vehicles. So in addition to the existing requirements for move over, if this bill moves through final passage, it will also require drivers to move over when a tow vehicle is on the side of the road, or when the freeway service patrol vehicles are on the side of the road assisting motorists. The other bill is regarding oversized vehicles, and we're simply working with the sponsor to make sure that as they adjust Nevada language to federal language, that it's in conformance, and that one is moving forward as well. We had our budget closing last week, and they approved everything we asked for. It actually says almost, but we withdrew one of our requests, so that was positive, and we're moving forward into the next biennium. And then my last slide is a congratulatory slide to 2 of our team members. When you have an organization that has people that love it so much that they stay for 30 years, eventually they retire. And so I'm excited that Thor Dyson has found a new position, and he's moving to the dark side, and he is retiring here in the next 2 weeks. We had a great opportunity. He's been fantastic at NDOT and has a great opportunity in the private sector, and I'm excited for him. And just like Bill, I know we will see him. We will miss him, but we will continue to see him and benefit from his contributions over the last 30 years. And lastly, Cole Mortensen will be assuming the role of deputy director in July. So effective July 8th, Cole Mortensen will be assuming that. He's transitioning in the meantime, and I'm looking forward to working with him in his new role. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Director Swallow. Any questions for Director? Commissioner Jordan, Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to actually jump back for a second to the prior item and just make sure that we gave adequate shout out to our Senators Masto and Rosen, and in particular, Congressman Amodei, for helping us get the Virginia Street Project grant, because they were significantly important through that process. So I just want to make sure we called them out for that. Can we go back to the slide? First off, your presentation is great. The visuals, and you've got it all. I love it. The presentation on the North McCarran, Can we talk about what the next steps are? Because I know you've had 2 public meetings on it, and so what's the next steps?
Finish the study.
Okay.
So we're going to finish the study, and once we have the study, we'll have an idea of what projects may be recommended, and then we'll work on figuring out how to prioritize those projects and bring them forward into the STIP.
Okay, and the timeline?
The study is supposed to be completed this summer, and after that, we're going to have to, well, it'll depend on which projects are recommended, what funding levels are required, and the associated rest of the priorities for.
Okay, so we'll know by the end of the summer, at
What's
least we'll be looking forward to, okay.
Yeah.
Just so I can report back and make sure. It's interesting that Chair Lucy pointed this out. So I live in Somerset, and my son goes to school at Reed, and we avoided going on the freeway because it was so dangerous with the Spaghetti Bowl. So we did the McCarran Loop, and now that has significant crashes, and Chair Lucy pointed out that it might be the drivers. And no, in all seriousness, yeah, it's a specific 1 or 2 drivers. In all seriousness, the accidents on, the crashes on North McCarran are not only voluminous, they are significant because of the speeds involved. So I appreciate very much you taking a holistic approach and looking at this, because it's a very dangerous, increasingly dangerous area. So I appreciate your work on this. Thank you.
Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for Vice Chair Jordan, I would remind you that when you live in the eye of the hurricane, you see nothing around you. So perhaps maybe you need to look in that rearview mirror. I jest. Director Swallow, I too appreciate how in-depth your report is. My question is different than what you mentioned. On Pyramid, we've had some issues in terms of, we put in a light at Pyramid and Calle de la Plata. And on Pyramid Highway, we have flashers that signal when the light is going to change so that it gives drivers the opportunity to slow down. Well, they decided to do the light at Pyramid and Calle de la Plata differently. The flashers constantly flash. And there have been now more accidents at that intersection than there were prior to the installation of the light. And so we've asked NDOT to either make the light at Calle de la Plata consistent with the rest of the lights, with literally all of the lights on Pyramid Highway. All of them have flashers and they signal when to stop. Either make it consistent or make the rest of the lights on Pyramid Highway consistent with the one at Calle de la Plata. Now, it would seem to me that it's easier to make the one consistent with the rest, but in the wisdom of traffic engineers, and I say that with tongue in cheek because I've dealt with traffic engineers for years, and I sometimes do not understand their thinking. It's not a pejorative comment. I just don't always understand directions that they go, and the diverging diamond, is that what you called it? You know, I had not lived until I drove that at night for the first time, and it was quite exhilarating. I'm used to it now, but I will tell you, it was a wild ride. It was an e-ticket, for those of you who know what e-tickets are. So it would be really nice if we could deal with that. And then, Mr. Gibson, I know we're looking at upgrades on the Pyramid Highway. It would seem to me that it would be wise, based on several other places in town, if we do the interchange at Sparks Boulevard first before we widen, because if not, all it'll create, even though we widen Pyramid Highway, it will do nothing but create gridlock when we get to the intersection of Sparks Boulevard and Highland Ranch Parkway. So, and we can witness that in other places like Veterans Memorial Parkway coming over into Sparks at night. The parkway is wonderful until you hit Gregg Street, and so we've got to change we needed to do the interchange first.
Commissioner Hartung, regarding Pyramid and Calle de la Plata, whenever we do something that's not consistent with the rest of the corridor, there's generally a reason for it. So before we take action to change one way or the other, I'll get back to you and let you know what the reasoning is, and then if we need to make a change, what we're looking at.
Yeah, And I get multiple calls a week from residents that are frustrated with it. And I can show you multiple emails of residents that are just frustrated with that scenario. So it would be wonderful. I'll share my cell with you before we leave. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Commissioner Delgado, Mayor Smith, anything for Ms. Swallow?
No.
Director Swallow, I have just a couple things really quickly. In regards to your discussion on the legislative session, the right-of-way bill that you're helping with, does that include for snowplows as well? Was that, you were talking about one in regards to
The move over bill?
for your, the highway assistance vehicles, but one of the challenges, I knew there was some discussion, was some right-of-way legislation that they were going to include for snowplows. I didn't know how active, I mean, for Washoe County, it plays a big role, obviously, because of our county plows that deal with Incline Village and throughout here, but also for your plows as they pertain to up and down throughout the mountain passes. The challenge is they don't have the same abilities as ambulances and whatnot as it pertains to when they're plowing snow and people getting out of their way, and those vehicles are very large and dangerous. I didn't know if that legislation had anything pertaining to snowplows in it.
Commissioner Lucy, I do not believe this bill does. This bill is specifically intended to protect the people when they're outside of their vehicles.
Okay.
So
All right.
law enforcement when they're outside of their vehicles, tow truck drivers when they're outside. So that's what the intent of this
Gotcha.
specific move over law legislation is about. But that is a good point that we may want to look at in the future.
Yeah, if we can help in any way, shape, or form for the next legislative session, I'd love to help you with that. And then one last thing I have is, I know we still had you did the safety study on Mount Rose Highway on 431. Do we have any updates or discussions on future improvements as it pertains to safety on that Mount Rose corridor between Callahan Ranch or Joy Lake Road and South Virginia? I didn't know if there was any discussions yet on that.
I don't have the final status of the report or the recommendations at this point, but I'll see what I can do to get you some more information.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, seeing nothing further, thank you so much, Ms. Swallow. We appreciate you all every time coming and spending time with us. I know it's taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us is important, but your presentations are fantastic. Really appreciate it. All right, we are now on to, we will close that item 5.3. We're on to item 6, engineering. We are going to open items 6.1 and 6.2 jointly. Is that correct, Mr. Director Gibson?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Item 6.1 is to approve an agreement for construction work between the RTC and Sierra Nevada Construction, also known as SNC, for Phase 2 of the Virginia Street Bus Rapid Transit Extension Project for a guaranteed maximum price of $47,193,185, and authorize the RTC Executive Director to execute the agreement contingent upon the RTC's receipt of the LONP from the FTA and the ability to issue the notice to proceed by May 31st. I'd like to point out we've received the LONP, so we're good to go on that. And I am also very pleased to recognize Mr. LeBlanc and Mr. Stewart for bringing the price down from $47,693,185 as posted in the agenda to $47,193,185. So if I could get a acknowledgement, perhaps Mr. LeBlanc and Mr. Stewart, and Mr. Spear, you could come to the podium. Item 6.2 is approve a professional services agreement with Atkins North America, Inc. to provide resident engineer and construction support services for the Virginia Street Bus Rapid Transit Extension Project in an amount not to exceed $5,358,471 and authorize the RTC Executive Director to execute the agreement contingent upon receipt of the letter of no prejudice from the FTA, which we have now received. With respect to the item 6.1, there are 3 changes. As I noted, the price has been reduced by $500,000. We will be doing minor edits to the contract between now and when we sign it. Will also be a minor edit to and a revision to the schedule as attached as Exhibit E. We're also going to add 1 item to the risk register, and we will increase that reserve by $33,750. Again, additional minor edits, and then The last one is the risk register will include retired items. In other words, as we progress through the project, items on the risk register are encountered. They won't be removed necessarily. They'll just be remaining on there as a historical record of matters that have been performed. Last but not least, the contract will no longer contain the conduct of construction plan as an exhibit. However, that plan will be finalized prior to the execution of the contract. The conduct of construction plan actually is a document that lays out how construction is going to occur and will be, actually, I found it to be a very understandable guide. With that, Mr. Spear, Mr. Stewart, is there anything I've left out in either my just summaries of 6.1 or 6.2?
Adam Spear, Director of Legal Services. Just to clarify some of the numbers Lee was pointing to, the original guaranteed maximum price was $47,693,185. That is now $47,222,952. And that's reflected in the materials in front of you.
Repeat that number, Adam.
$47,222,952.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We just got three different numbers, that's all.
The numbers on the sheet
Apparently
in
he,
front of you are correct.
I'm sorry, Adam, I think has the exact number. The last word I had was approximately 500,000, so.
All right. Mr. Stewart.
Brian Stewart, Director of Engineering. First of all, I just want to thank everybody, the staff, Doug Malloy, Jeff Wilbrook, Adam Spear, on being able to get to this contract, actually both of these contracts, and our consultant and our contractor, SNC, and Atkins. Without everybody coming to the table and really working hard to get this completed, it wouldn't have happened. So I want to thank that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Mr. LeBlanc.
Dan LeBlanc, Sternvetta Construction. I'm on the project management team. I'd like to say thank you as well to the board members. Many of you have been very, very involved in helping us get to this point. It's been a long road, and we're really excited. I also like to thank the RTC staff, Doug and Jeff and Michael and Lauren and that team. They've been awesome. And I think as we continue what we've done with phase one into phase two, we've set a lot of groundwork of success and what we need to learn from, and how we'll continually improve upon what we're doing. We're going to put 70 plus people to work come June 17th from our community. So that's something that everybody here at the RTC and SNC, Atkins, NCE, we should all be very proud of. That's a lot of people going to work because of the hard work from everybody in this room. The other thing I'd like to give our commitment to is there's another member of this team that's very vocal, and that's the businesses out there. It's the reason this job is, in my opinion, a CMAR job, a construction manager at risk, is because of that. And this job won't be successful if all members of this team aren't successful at the end of it. And so between the businesses, I want them to know, and I want you guys to hear it, you have our commitment on behalf of RTC, NC, and Atkins to do everything we can to make this as painless as possible for them. Construction is never fun, it's never easy, but the end game is going to be amazing, and we're all very, very excited about it. So, if there's any questions I do have.
Vice Chair Jordan.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So your understanding is the $47,222,952?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is this, since there's not a Virginia Street update, because there's not been any construction going on for the last month. I saw yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, obviously the in-between road surface is very rough. We know you're coming through, and that will be repaired as you complete the project. Somebody actually broke the axle on their car coming up Virginia Street on some of that surface. So how are we, and it was fairly far north on Virginia Street, so you're not going to get to that section, I don't believe. How do we get that information to you to see if there needs to be some patching, smoothing in the areas that clearly, I mean, it broke the guy's axle on his truck. It was pretty significant. Now, I don't know the conditions of speeds, I don't know anything like that. So do I just send it to you?
Yeah, so If something comes up, feel free to forward it to the RTC, and they'll forward it through me, or it can come to me
Okay.
directly. I would say Michael and I were dealing with that Saturday. There's two parts to everything, and condition of a vehicle obviously plays a major role in an axle braking. There's hundreds of cars that travel at each day.
I'm just
but we are
going
happy
to pass
look
it
at
along. I'm getting pinged on stuff, so I'll pass it to you guys and let you guys deal with it.
Fair enough.
I do want to say thank you very much for all of your outreach and communication with the businesses. You've been at every one of the meetings. You've been out there talking to everybody, issues already, kind of calming some nerves, letting people know kind of what the process is going to be. Information is key. They really do appreciate and are very thankful for your input out there, and I'm thankful for that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board? All right. Mr. LeBlanc, I want to thank you as well for all the time and effort you put into this. This is important. I was speaking to a business owner yesterday, or actually not yesterday, on Friday, that off of Center Street, and they acknowledge that this has had an effect. You know, the project has had an effect on Virginia and those businesses also off on Center, and a number of that, just because it's one of those major thoroughfares that you need to get through. But I think it has been tremendous, the amount of outreach that you guys have done as, and RTC, and I want to thank our staff that have all been involved with that, because Mayor Smith and I incurred a lot of that with our last contract that we had in the 4th Street Prater project, and how challenging that was for some of the businesses in Prater, on Prater Way, and also on 4th Street. But, you know, we just need to get this project done, and so now that we've got the kind of green light from the FTA, let's move forward quickly and as fast as we can to make sure that this is a highly productive project, the same as 4th Street Prater turned out. So thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
just for the commission and an indulgence here, would anyone who's in the audience who is either an RTC staff member or consultant who has been involved with this, please stand? Thank you, Mr. Hale. I'm glad you stood.
I'm so proud of Jeff Hale.
The fact that Mr. Hale stood is an indication of how long this project has been going on. But anyway, I want to thank all the staff for working on all elements of this project, but deeply appreciate the commitment.
right.
So, with that, Mr. Chair, staff would recommend approval of item 6.1 and 6.2.
Okay, we have 6.1, 6.2 open right now, looking for a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Motion from by Vice Mayor, a second, Vice Chairman Jordan, second by Commissioner Hartung. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate it. We're on to item 6.3. This is the acknowledged receipt and presentation of the Regional Road Impact Fee Program, and authorize staff to present the 6th edition of the Regional Road Impact Fee, or RIF, General Administrative Manual and Capital Improvements Plan to the Planning Commission and elected board of each participating local government for adoption. Welcome.
Well, good morning.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. For the record, Julie Masterpole, Engineering Manager with the RTC. I'm here to present the next update of the Regional Road Impact Fee Capital Improvement Plan and the General Administrative Manual. And as you mentioned, this is the 6th edition since we started the program back in 1996. And since it's been a while since the Impact Fee Program has been before the board, I have a few slides that give some general information. New development contributes the need to build capacity improvements on public facilities, and impact fees were developed as a funding tool to collect the cost of building additional capacity due to that new development. And in our case, we're looking at an impact fee program that just focuses on the regional road network. Impact fees require a defined service area that establishes a reasonable connection between the need for the additional facilities and that the fee payer will benefit in some way from those fees. It also requires a capital improvement plan that fees are based on that includes a list of actual projects, of capacity projects. Per NRS, this is limited to a 10-year maximum list of capacity projects. And that the calculation of fees are based on a fair share formula, and that the fee is equitable between the impact to new development and their impact to the improvements that are needed. Some components that are included in the RIF program. NRS, of course, has to allow governments to create an impact fee program. The local ordinances allow implementation of specific impact fees at the local level. For our program, we have an interlocal agreement that's a four-party agreement between Reno, RTC, City of Sparks, and Washoe County that identifies what responsibilities each agency has. And we have a capital improvement plan that describes the methodology used to calculate the impact fee and also includes a list of capacity projects that those fees are based on. And a companion manual to that is the general administrative manual that outlines how the fees are assessed on new developments, kind of our procedures and guidelines. Now, initially, when the program was first started, we had a single service area with 3 separate benefit districts, the Northeast, Northwest, and the South Benefit District. However, there was an amendment to NRS that limited an entire city from being included in a single service area. So the program was modified to create 2 separate service areas, one being the North and then the South service area. The North basically is a combination of the Northeast and the Northwest benefit districts, and the South stayed the same. And this allowed us to break up the City of Sparks and the City of Reno into the 2 separate service areas, meeting NRS requirement. But this also required that we have 2 separate capital improvement plans and 2 separate impact fee rates for the different service areas. And here's kind of a flow chart that outlines the basic steps to create the impact fee, and it also helps us determine what the cost is for the separate service areas and also the growth that is associated with the separate service areas. I'll kind of go into a little bit more detail here. To measure growth on a road type program, we use a basic service unit called VMTs, or Vehicle Miles Traveled. And this is a combination of the vehicle trips, which is typically measured in average daily traffic, ADTs, and the average trips on the regional road network, and trip length, also known as trip length. So VMT is an acronym that you're going to see throughout this presentation. To estimate the future growth on the 2 separate service areas, we start with the consensus forecast. And for the population employment that's anticipated to grow in the Truckee Meadows area, we use TMRPA's development model that determines where and when growth is going to occur in our area. Now, this development model analyzes each parcel using a host of suitability factors to distribute where that projected new employment and new population growth is going to occur at the various different timeframes. It looks at zoning and development approvals, building terrain, available utilities, the proximity to the regional road network. And this information is taken into RTC's our travel demand model that has also our regional road network. And this population employment is aggregated into what's known as traffic analysis zones. And then the trips that are accumulated from that new growth in the traffic analysis zone is layered onto our regional road network to determine what the new vehicle trips or new VMTs are required on the regional network in the future. So this allows us, the travel demand model allows us to get a list of projects where capacity projects are needed in the future and a time frame, and it also gives us what the growth is anticipated by those 2 separate service areas that we've been talking about. So all of this information is included in our regional transportation plan. Roadway improvements then we need to break down the roadway improvements into the 2 separate service areas, the capacity improvements in the north and then the capacity improvements in the south. Now, we use the first 10 years of the RTP as the basis for the Regional Road Impact Fee Capital Improvement Plan. So kind of as a summary here, that the RTP does include more than just capacity improvements. So by taking those projects out of the RTP, we first have to take out the projects that are not eligible for impact fees, which include pavement preservation projects, freeway projects, because this is limited to just the regional road network. Things like ADA projects, because those are upgrading existing facilities that are not eligible for impact fees. Bridge replacements, again, is upgrading existing facilities. So we take those projects, and then we also have to accommodate other funding sources that are anticipated to be used to supplement the RIF fees for building those capacity improvements. We have federal, state dollars, and we also have our fuel tax dollars that are used to help build the capacity projects. So to determine new growth's fair share of the impact fee or the capacity projects, we take the total capacity projects and subtract out the other funding sources used to help build those capacity projects. And this gives us a grand total for the North Service area of about $103 million. That's new development share, and another $72 or $73 million in the South Service area. We divide those total capital improvement costs by the VMT growth that we got out of the travel demand model to come up with what the dollar per VMT rate for new development share for those capacity projects. And here's kind of a comparison between our current 5th edition capital improvement plan and the 6th edition. You can kind of see what the RIF share is between the North and the South, between the 5th edition and the 6th edition, and where the growth is occurring. One thing that we really noticed between the previous and the 5th edition was based on the 2035 Regional Transportation Plan. Back then, we anticipated that there was going to be more growth over the 10-year timeframe of the CIP, actually in the South. That has now moved to anticipating more growth in the North. And that also relates to the projects that are needed. The capacity projects are going to be needed a little bit more in the North than they are in the South. So with that, the companion manual, the General Administrative Manual, really hasn't changed very much between the various editions. We did have two things that we did add. Back in actually 1996, the State Attorney General issued an opinion that said state projects were exempt from impact fees. And this was based mainly because the state had to be required to be subject to the fee by local ordinance. So we've been following this all along, but we thought it was good to go ahead and at least document it in the General Administrative Manual. Now, the second item here that we have is due to the timing of when the capital improvement plan is actually established. Typically, many developers are required or conditioned to build improvements that are on our regional transportation plan. There's a time lag between when the RTP is adopted and when we actually get the fees established and adopted through the capital improvement plan for the RIF program. So we have allowed, by this provision, a developer to go ahead and start building a capacity project that will be on a future CIP if it's within a certain time frame, so within 12 months. So somebody that was conditioned to do a project on the RTP, it allows us to get the adoption in place. He could go ahead and start his capacity project, and then we follow on as soon as our CIP is adopted, and they can follow through with getting a RIF offset agreement so that they can get reimbursed through RIF waivers for those improvements that they're building. Now, the next steps, if approved today, I will take this to each of the local planning commissions for approval or recommendation for approval to go forward to the local city councils and county commission. Since this is an ordinance change, there are 2 readings at those governing bodies that will be required. So we anticipate, based on the timeline of getting on everyone's schedule, that we would have a new fee go into effect in about September, October of this fall. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Masterpool. Appreciate the presentation. Any questions? Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Masterpool, I appreciate it. So what were the average weekday vehicle trips? And I'll just use your table 8, which is on page 12, of a single unit. You have 8.5 trips, weekday trips per dwelling unit, correct?
Right. Now
And
that's.
Isn't the national model 10?
Correct. When we do have local information, we try and use the localized average ADT, and that's where that 8.83 or 53
Right. Okay.
trips per single-family home. If we did use the ITE trip generation rate, it would make the fees much higher for a single-family home.
Right, right. Well, I can tell you in my own house, I don't get anywhere near 8. They're much lower than that. However, our VMTs are triple that. So my VMTs are 40, probably, for me, it's 24 miles each, 12. And then my wife is probably more like 13, so 26. So
And you have to remember that the VMTs are only, that trip length
Yes.
is only the trip that's on the regional road network.
which is
Doesn't
all of
include
it for
freeway.
me.
Oh, okay.
So
So you might be one of the outliers.
Pyramid, and then McCarran, and then 395, and then a small amount on Wells. Right? So I just question how accurate 15 I mean, if you have a family of 4 and you've got kids that you're taking to soccer and baseball and, and that's just 2 kids. If you've got 3 kids, I can only imagine. I just think that these numbers, and I'm not trying to beat up developers, but I think that these numbers are low, and I'm a little concerned that we're still in over our head in terms of the RIF credits and the value of the RIF credits.
It's information that we've used in our travel demand model, and that's where we get not only where our trip length on the regional road is, and again, it's an average. This is
Sure.
Based on an average, so you might have somebody that jumps right on the freeway and doesn't have that longer trip. So it's something we can always relook at, but it's our best guess, and we do, with our travel demand model, we do verify that information that we get out of our model with actual ADT counts that NDOT provides to us. So we do try and verify that information.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So again, I'll go to table 8. So we have 15.03 VMTs, and then you would multiply that by 320.71 to
Yes.
get the cost per dwelling unit of RIF fees. Am I correct in that?
Yes,
Okay, so that would be $4,820 as a base RIF fee
correct. And
Okay.
there should be, at the
per dwelling unit.
per dwelling unit. So 4,820 for the north and 4,453 is for the south for a single-family home.
Okay. And while I understand where we are, I still think those numbers are low. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Any other further discussion? Mayor Smith?
Depending on when I can get on everyone's board, I anticipate after the very last approval process, we'll have about a 30-day notice so that we give everybody a chance to know that the fees are going to be updated.
So do these new fees, are they for existing projects now or for new projects after October?
The fees are paid at the time of either the building permit or the certificate of occupancy. It can be paid in whatever is in effect at the time they make the payment.
Okay, so if somebody's got a project going now, they've already paid their fees, they don't have to worry about increases? Okay, thank you.
All right. Ms. Masterpool, I have one quick question for you too. We have the census coming up. Will that information change any future additions as we go? To Commissioner Hartung's point, any of the data that we're collecting as it pertains to VMT and the daily mile, those miles traveled, and who those people are, will that change it? Will you use that data?
Yes, we will. And typically, every time we redo a new edition of the impact fee capital improvement plan, we'll go to the most recent information that's available. So if there's a new 2018, 2020 census, that information will be used to develop the new fees and actually the capital improvement projects also.
Great. All right. All right. Looking for. All right. Seeing nothing further, and I do not have anyone signed in for public comment at this time. Looking for a motion to approve. I have a motion from Mayor Smith. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Delgado. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Vanderpool. All right, we are on to item 6.4. Mr. Gibson.
Mr. Chair, item 6.4 is to receive a report on a proposed automated pavement data collection pilot project. Scott Gibson, our resident pavement expert, will give us a quick run through of this presentation.
Welcome, Mr. Gibson.
Thank you, Scott Gibson with RTC Engineering. This is, we're looking at doing a pilot project on automated pavement data collection. And I always like to take advantage of this to educate people on pavement engineering. So here's your little pavement engineering primer today. This is, so pavements start off in good condition. You build a new pavement and it starts off in good condition, then over time it deteriorates. And throughout that process, in the pavement life, you do preventive maintenance when it's new to keep good roads good, and then you get into more corrective, heavier, more expensive treatments, and then you get to rehabilitation and reconstruction at the end. And the orders of magnitude here, that preventive maintenance is like 25 cents a square foot. When you get down to the reconstruction with complete streets and that type of thing these days, it gets from $15, $20, $25 a square foot. So orders of magnitude if you can keep stuff going. And so if you're doing preventive maintenance, the whole idea is to do these little slurry treatments that you see around town and push that curve out and make the pavements last longer, make your service life last longer. That's the theory. This is what it looks like in real life. The bottom curve, the red one, was done by a young Washoe County engineer named Greg Balancio back in 1993. Greg has all of your agencies run MicroPaver as your pavement management systems, and Greg was a power user, and so he developed family curves for all of his pavements, and that bottom line is how his arterial curves, how his arterial pavements behaved in 1993. And so it took like 10 years. The PCI of 50, the Pavement Condition Index, is the threshold for a poor condition pavement. So in 1993, it took about 10 years for a pavement to get to a condition of poor, of 50. So RTC started doing a lot of preventive maintenance, and we took over that. And and we said, Greg, your curves are kind of showing the roads looking worse than they actually are. So he reran his curves, and in 2012, it took 20 years to get to a PCI of 50. So using good pavement preservation techniques, there's a lot of stuff going on in these slides with materials and practices and all that kind of stuff, but the most of it is preventive maintenance. He doubled the performance life of his network. And so we have like $1 billion worth of pavement on the ground in the Truckee Meadows. And so the replacement value of that, if you can do good pavement preservation, which we do, then there's just huge benefits of it. And our roads are 90% of our roadways are in good condition. And so we're in preventive maintenance mode. Just a little background. So we were approached by UNR and through government, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, to look at by a company who does automated pavement management systems. Right now, we collect this data with people standing by the side of the road, looking at, and they enter data and then they manually enter it and that type of thing. And there's been a lot of improvements in automated data collection over time. And so we were looking at a company called Manum, and Denise, if you can run that video. They provide automated data collection services. And so instead of standing by the side of the road, they have vehicles with cameras that drive through the roadway, and they're all GIS tied in. And so they do the road survey unit. There's all kinds of multiple cameras, and they measure all kinds of things about the roadway. And then they go through, and it's tied to a GIS system, and they have cameras that look at the pavement, but then they also look at the side, and so they collect information on assets like bus stations and signs, and they're high resolution, so you can get a lot of detail about that type of thing. And there's measurement tools, and then they look at actually the distresses and evaluate that, and that all goes into this system. And so there's a lot more information, and it's a lot more robust than the regular stuff. And then once you get this information, you have conditions of all of your roadways, and you can start doing evaluations of putting in your budget. And what a pavement management system does is allow you to look at your budget and what your projected work plan is, and the kind of things you need to do if you want to improve the condition of your roadway, how much that's going to cost you, if you want to stay at steady state, and that type of thing as well. That's enough, Denise. And so, again, so we're looking at, so there's been a lot of this information in this space, and there's a lot of people that do this stuff, but we have this opportunity to kind of take advantage of this and do a pilot study for this. The benefits of it are improved safety, worker safety, who are standing by the side of the road. We get this data more manually. There's visual records. It's more complete and accurate data sets. Right now, you know, the sampling units are theoretically randomly selected and that type of thing. This, we get a lot more complete data, and it makes the data more accessible to decision makers to communicate with decision makers and stakeholders to you about what's going on. There's a lot better information to kind of show what's happening with this. And whoops, went back, there we go. So there was a pilot proposal, and again, there's a matching grant associated with this. We had Manum came in, and we met with all of your staff and that type of thing, and they were very interested in beginning to explore this idea. And so the next steps would be, once we get this pilot project done, there's a lot of people in this space, and it would allow us to evaluate whether or not this is something that all of the agencies want to move to, determine how applicable it is for us, and then if it was something, then in the future we'd develop an RFP that kind of based on the information that we gather from this pilot project. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Vice Chair Jordan.
Thank you very much. So the evaluation of the roads includes all roads, local and regional roads, or just certain?
The pilot project, we do like 70 miles. Right now, we have a consultant, RTC has a consultant that does the evaluations for the RTP roads. Every 3 years, they do about a third of our network every 3 years. And your agencies, some of your agencies use that same consultant on your networks as well.
Okay, so tell me again all the agencies that you're working with?
It would be Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County. And again, with this, we'd get, again, about 70 miles of roadway using this automated system. And then we could evaluate how well it compares to the existing manual.
Got it.
Presentations and that type of thing.
I got it. So the 90% condition of roads being good, that is all roads, regional and local?
Let me go back and I will go. The all roads is 72%. RTP roads are 90%.
Okay. That's what I was trying to understand, where the 90.
And actually on this slide, and I actually have a column, the red stuff, that's an agency over in the Bay Area. And that's kind of where we were, if you all remember, back in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, where most of our roadways were in poor condition. And it's taken 20 years, millions of dollars for us to dig our way out of that. So we're in really good shape right now, actually.
Great, thank you.
More broken axles.
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. I have just a question. So this project's going to cost us $25,000. Before we were relying on partnering agencies to supply the PCI information. So would Washoe County engineers and City of Reno engineers and City of Sparks engineers supply RTC with that, or were we collecting our own data?
Absolutely. We have a pavement preservation subcommittee that We get together every month or 2 months.
I'm talking about the physical people who are out doing the collection of data.
That's done for the RTC
RTC,
roads.
yes.
It's done by a consultant.
Okay.
I believe Sparks uses a consultant, and Washoe County has also. I
Okay.
think City of Reno might still use their own staff.
Okay, so once we move to this more automated system, it still doesn't identify automatically via GPS coordinates, latitude and longitude, where a pothole is. That still has to be manually input, correct?
It,
Or a bad section of road. We still have to have someone sit there and look at the data. Am I correct in that, or is there?
There's different levels of that. This particular company, it's kind of, they get the video part, and then they have technicians that evaluate the videos and identify the distresses from that. There are other systems that are being developed where they have laser crack measurement devices, and it gets even more refined. And again, that would be something that would be explored on down the road if there was interest in moving to a different system.
The only hitch that I see is you physically have to drive the roads. It would be great if we could utilize data from, high-resolution satellite imaging to make that same determination as to, what the condition is, and ultimately, be able to just, more automate the whole system. My concern is that will we end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater, trying to become more automated, and we end up with where we're overlooking certain kinds of things that would not have been overlooked before?
Oh, I think the contrary is true, that these systems allow you to actually, instead of having to reviewing the data and going out to the site and that type of thing, you have that information on a video record.
Okay.
That's maintained farther. And again, the videos also do the
And
RTC
sidewalks
doesn't really
and-
have any assets like that.
Right.
We're looking at the pavement, but the agencies, the benefit to them is, signs, benches, all that side stuff is more available, and you can maintain your assets better that way.
Well, and I'm fully supportive of a PCI program. I mean, we've used it, as you know, in Washoe County. I mean, we depend on it, and it's like painting your house.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely important. So I look forward to seeing how automation can potentially play a role and really allow us to put our assets where we need to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Any further discussion with this? Mr. Gibson, I do have one question in regards to the 67 mile. When will the pilot project start?
That's a good question. Hopefully by the fall. We haven't entered into any agreements yet, and
So
so,
potentially by the fall, this fall?
yes.
Okay, and then once the project started, the 60 to 70 miles, how long would that take to conduct that study?
Oh, a few days, and
Okay.
and then maybe a couple weeks to get the data back and that type of thing, and then we'll start evaluating what we have.
So potentially by the fall, we may have some sort of results by late winter, early
Yeah, I
next
think
year?
that's a good potential time frame. But again, this is all, we haven't entered
Speculative
into
at this
any
time.
of this yet.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, Mr. Gibson.
Thanks.
Looking, there is no direction on this, so this is just an information item at this time. All right, we are on to item 6.5. This is receive a report on the Arlington Avenue Bridges Project. Mr. Gibson.
Mr. Stewart, Brian, you going to give us a quick summary of this?
Good morning, Commissioners, Commander and Chairman. Brian Stewart, Director of Engineering. All right, we're starting another exciting project for the RTC with the Arlington Avenue Bridge Replacement feasibility study. So it's the first step in getting the proper information so that we can move this project forward. As some of you may know, Arlington Avenue has two bridges across the Truckee River here. We have the southern bridge, which is the shorter bridge, right on Island Avenue there. And then as you move north there's the longer bridge that goes over the main branch of the Truckee River up by the First Avenue. So there's a purpose and need for this bridge through NDOT does inspections of our bridges throughout the state, and it's been identified that this bridge is structurally deficient. You can see some of the inspection photos are there. Therefore, we need to look at replacing this bridge. In the replacement of the structure itself, we would ensure that we have our bike and pedestrian ways improved on the deck of that bridge. Make sure it's all ADA compliant and it's safe for pedestrians with the bridge rail and that stuff. And obviously from a flood component, we got to make sure that the new bridge can handle the Truckee River and the scour and the flood conditions that go with that. The scope of this work includes completion of the feasibility study and the conceptual alternatives analysis to encompass agencies and stakeholder coordination, conceptual plans, development and preliminary design, public outreach, and determine the environmental, the community, and the economic constraints associated with rehabilitating or reconstructing this bridge. Going through this study will help us reduce the range of possible bridge types and sort of the aesthetics themes that might be in that corridor for that small section of Arlington Avenue. Outcome of this would be the feasibility study, of which we would use to carry into our more studies like our National Environmental Protection Act and NEPA policies. And then we'd also be using the planning and environmental linkages documentation, which is a plan that helps us document and involve the community to be able to get to the right solution for this project. Our process for getting the information is modeled after the Virginia Street process. We want to establish the regional stakeholders, which is pretty much everybody in the region that really wants to participate, define the stakeholder working groups. We want to develop the design standards and the criteria. We want to review the conceptual alternatives. We want to provide the recommendations to the governing bodies to understand and reduce the number of alternatives that might be out there. We'll have a public outreach, which will include a kickoff meeting. Will be coming up shortly. Don't have a date set yet. We'll have 3 stakeholder working group meetings and then a technical advisory committee with the permitting agency and obviously the city of Reno and their engineering staff to help us get to that final plan. And then we will also close it out with a public meeting of the final results of the feasibility study. Graphical reference in graphics of the route we would go, identify the goals, provide the conceptual alternatives, the stakeholder working group, then reduces that in the iterative process to go around until we can get to a reduced number of alternatives that we can go into a feasibility to determine the cost, schedule, and total scope of the project through this feasibility study. Always engaging the public and the community, and of course, this commission, as well as the City of Reno Council. Overall project plan, we'd start with a kickoff meeting here shortly, have a working group shortly after that, and you can see that laid out. With the public meeting looking into the springtime, complete the study in 2020, summer of 2020, and then look at a future contract with the NEPA and design and construction out in that time frame. So with that, I'd like to introduce Julie Tortelli. She will be the project manager for this bridge and lead us through this exciting project. And I'd like to answer any questions.
Mayor Smith.
Me?
Yes.
Hey, Brian, those pictures look pretty bad of the foundation. And I believe that just before the Virginia Street Bridge was replaced, we restricted buses they couldn't go on it. Is there any restrictions on this bridge?
There currently isn't. UNR, as you probably saw in the paper, we tried to move a historic house across that bridge.
Is that the bridge they were trying to?
And got stopped, yes, because of the load limitations. But no, right now it's in decent condition for carrying all the loads.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Harton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Stewart, I have just a couple of questions. Does this, like the Virginia Street Bridge, also present a hydrological impediment on the river?
The Arlington Bridge is not at the design flows of the 100-year plus 2 feet on it. So it is not causing an issue. How the flood and the city of Reno deal with that right now is it's an opportunity where you can pick debris out of the river so that downstream where bridges do have a hydraulic issue, you're not getting that debris buildup and jeopardizing during those events that those bridges could be knocked out because of hydraulics and storms.
Do we intend on elevating this bridge also?
It will meet the same criteria of the flood, so we'll have to look at whether we even need to elevate that, but that's part of the feasibility study. We'll look at what those constraints are and where we need to go with that.
And in terms of funding, is there an intent to ask TRFMA, the Truckee River Flood Management Authority, for some participation?
Yes, absolutely. Right now, it's just RTC Fuel Tax is supporting this feasibility study. We will be, part of that feasibility is coming up with a finance plan of how we can move this project forward. We'll have a better idea of cost estimate and also probably need to chase some federal grants. We are going to have to do the NEPA process because Army Corps is heavily involved in the Truckee River in that, and so we need to make sure we're doing it their way so we can get our 404 and 408 permits.
Most regulated waterway in the nation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Seeing no further discussion by the board, this is just a information item only. So thank you, Mr. Stewart. We appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
All right, we are on to item 7, general administration. 7.1, Mr. Director, Mr. Gibson.
Mr. Chairman, item 7.1 is to acknowledge receipt of the RTC 2018 annual report. In place of Ms. Cummings today, Mr. Marino will provide this item. Michael?
Welcome, Mr. Moreno.
Thank you, Lee. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. For the record, Mike Moreno, RTC Public Affairs Manager. 2018 was a remarkable year for all of us and the region. The RTC 2018 annual report is an opportunity to share the progress of transportation investments in the Truckee Meadows. Your staff report includes a summary of public outreach events, project and program updates, and data regarding RTC performance measures. A few highlights I'd like to bring to your attention include our grand opening celebrations of 2 major projects, the Southeast Connector and the 4th Street Prater Way Bus Rapid Transit projects. In calendar year 2018, there were 194 public meetings, presentations, and other events. This represents a 9% increase over 2017 in community outreach and engagement. A footnote, September was our busiest month with 31 events, almost an event every single day that month. Additionally, our social media engagement reached over 679,000 impressions on Facebook and more than 377,000 impressions on Twitter. We completed and initiated 9 planning studies, including the Washoe County Regional Travel Characteristics Survey, the ADA Transition Plan, and the Vision Zero Truckee Meadows Task Force. In public transportation, we expanded our electric bus program with new charging infrastructure and the delivery of 17 new electric buses. Also, the addition of 23 new van pools, reducing hundreds of cars from our roadways, which help our air quality and reduce congestion. This is the fastest growing segment in our public transportation program. We also signed up 460 new commuters to rideshare. We completed the North Valley's Phase 2 improvements, the Evans Avenue bike and pedestrian improvements, and a number of safety improvements, including the construction of 211 new pedestrian ramps, almost 6 miles of multi-use pathways, more than 17 miles of new bike lanes added, and 3.2 miles of new sidewalks. These highlights and our work program demonstrate our commitment and advancement of our culture of safety. Through your leadership, we delivered these projects and programs to improve our region's transportation systems, enhancing the quality of life for residents and visitors. The work we have accomplished would not have been possible without the strong community participation and engagement to develop and deliver our work program. This is representative of our strong and numerous regional and community partnerships. We can all be proud of the work we have collectively achieved. Our annual report will be printed in hard copy and available online. But this year, we have created a video to highlight our achievements, which will also be shared on our website and social media channels. While Denise gets ready to dim the lights and cue the video, commissioners, audience members, and our Facebook viewers, it is my pleasure to share with you the RTC 2018 Annual Report video. Does anyone want to see the video again? Just kidding.
Can we get a copy so we can take
Yeah.
it home?
Yes, absolutely. Commissioners, I not only want to thank you, the RTC staff, and our community partners for a very successful year, but I want to thank your RTC communications team for creating the 2018 annual report document and video. Nicole Coots, graphic designer. You can stand. Lauren Ball, PIO, and Nancy Muse, senior graphic designer, who's watching this on Facebook.
Awesome. Congratulations.
That's my report. I'll answer any questions.
All right. Vice Chair Jordan.
Thank you very much. I like that. I like it. It makes you kind of go, you forgot all the things you did in a year. You know, it's nice to see it in a visual format that can be shared so people can kind of see the breadth of things that you've done. So I appreciated that. The one thing I didn't see up there, it said the pedestrian ramps. I know the RTC installed a number of the pedestrian flashers. Maybe for next year when you do it, because I think that's significant, because I get a lot of comments from people appreciating the number of the pedestrian flashers that have been installed.
We'll see if we can add that before we
Okay.
push it out.
Mr. Moreno, I have a quick question for you. Now, with the video, will that be disseminated to all three entities for them to play on our TVs throughout the building, throughout the county?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. That'd be fantastic. Really appreciate that. Any further questions for Mr. Moreno? All right. Thank you, Mr. Moreno. Really appreciate it. Wonderful report. All right. Do we need a motion on that? Yes. Yeah.
Move to accept.
I got a motion from Mayor Smith. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Hartung. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We are on to item 7.2. Mr. Gibson.
Mr. Chairman, item 7.2 is to rate the Regional Transportation Commission RTC agency performance for fiscal year FY19. That's from July 1, 2018 to June 30th of 2019. Angela Reich, the Director of Administrative Services for RTC, will provide us a overview and go through some of the operational issues at hand with this item.
Good morning.
Welcome, Ms.
Again,
Reich.
Angela Reich, Director of Administrative Services for the record, and I'm here to present the item before you for you to rate our agency on our performance for fiscal year 19. We're at the time of year where we are in the midst of evaluating performance, and that includes the agency rating, which the board rates us. We are also in the middle of common review, which at the RTC, all employees are completing an annual performance evaluation based on their individual fiscal year 19 goals. And it is an electronic form, so we're in the midst of that, and we will complete that by June of 2019. And then next month, I'll bring back an item for the rating performance of Executive Director Lee Gibson. And just a little bit of background for our Pay for Performance plan program. It was approved by the board in 2013. It is somewhat, I think, unique for our region. We have a Pay for Performance pool that is distributed for our employees based on performance. The board has, with their rating of our overall performance, they can affect 1/3 of our Pay for Performance pool. And then the result is employees get a set proportional amount that is distributed on July 1st. We don't have cost of living adjustments. This Pay for Performance is what our employees may be eligible for each July 1st. And then with your item, we did attach the status of our fiscal year 19 goals. And then the second attachment is a list of accomplishments by departments. And so we're going to provide a brief overview right now of the status of our fiscal year goals, of what is completed. And Lee, I don't know if you wanted to highlight any of the...
Well, Mr. Chair, I would just highlight that some of the items perhaps we weren't able to include in the video because I don't know that they're quite ready for video type presentation, but a couple of them on here I'd like to highlight. The fixed route contract with Keolis, that was a huge accomplishment this year. That took staff, we involved staff across the entire agency from finance, transit operations, even engineering. Looking over here, I can see Mr. Wilbrecht and I see Jennifer Myers, and they popped to mind because they were both Jennifer ran that procurement. Jeff was sort of our internal outside evaluator. We wanted to bring all of the perspectives of the agency to that contractor selection. I think the quality of that contractor represents that viewpoint. The 17 fixed route replacement buses as an accomplishment, that is a huge savings for us. We're positioned well for the next recession to perhaps not have to cut service or reduce service as significantly as perhaps we've had in the past when we've gone into recessions. So some of these accomplishments, I think, are all very important. The construction, we talked earlier today, the 4th Street Prater Way project, there are a lot of lessons learned from that project and the accomplishments. And I am someone who will tell you that I believe in critical thinking. We're going to take a lot of the critical lessons learned from 4th Prater and move those onto Virginia Street so we can do better. So with that.
And just a number of items that are underway that you heard about too. Highlighting the ADA transition plan is underway, and a number of studies have been initiated.
And one that's also underway that is part of the ADA transition plan is our bus stop improvement program, which I think will be available and amenable to a video next year as we begin completing those types of projects. This commission has appropriated upwards of, I believe, $2 million towards those improvements. And that's something I think we're all very excited about. The one thing on here, I do want to provide some perhaps late-breaking news. The last check mark underway, change statute language of RTC's property disposition and microtransit, as I said earlier, that is going to be voted on this week. And hopefully Mr. Sisolak will sign that, and we will be moving into the microtransit arena, which I think when we go to our workshop in July, we're going to find the microtransit service that is an on-demand type app that will allow for you to get to one of our transfer facilities for an area that we're serving is going to be an innovative technological advancement for us, but it's also going to be one that will come early in the new fiscal year as an accomplishment. So, yes.
Can I speak? Thank you. And for those that are going, what is the property disposition? This is a big one. This is a big deal. This is when RTC engages in a project and acquires land, and there might be remnant parcels or pieces of property that are left over, for lack of a better term, when a project is completed. We had difficulty in the past being able to, I guess, donate those for, in particular, housing, affordable housing projects. This will help clear that up so those parcels can be better donated. Is that the right word?
I would say used for another public purpose. That right now, and we're the only entity, we're the only governmental entity, the RTCs, that cannot do that. NDOT can do that, the cities can do that, but we cannot put property to another public use. So that's something I think will be a nice change for us.
And that's a big deal, particularly on transit lines. Kind of makes sense to be able to use those for other purposes. So fingers are crossed that that makes it through.
And here's my final slide. These are just continuous goals that we're working on. Street and highway policy update, a number of traffic and pedestrian safety, as that was highlighted in the agency annual report video. Number of cost controls, employee recruitment. We hired 7 employees this past fiscal year and 2 interns. And with that, I don't know if Lee wanted to add anything else before we conclude.
Mr. Gibson, I'd like to probably take a stab at this. Obviously, as an organization, this board oversees a number of projects, and probably the ones that are the most prudent and out there constantly on everybody's mind is the construction. That's what everybody experiences. But there are a number of things, as you pointed out, Ms. Reich, that happen behind the scenes that are also very important that not maybe everybody is aware of. Obviously, finance has had a lot of victories over the last year in regards to their bond refinancing, a number of initiatives that they have gone to save money for the organization. Planning, Ms. Cummings is with us today, but planning, the South Meadows multimodal study, those kind of growth plans, those things, those initiatives that RTC has done to help with further the process. Fixed route, a number of the changes that we've made to fixed route and improves we've seen there have tremendously added to our community. facilities, the Villanova Maintenance Facility, moving out of that facility and adding the bus bays and the improvements for our electric buses and our bus washes and making it safer for our drivers. Those are tremendous. So if you go through this and then the plans and the campaigns, we've had national events here that highlight our public transit. We've had a number of different conferences, government conferences that have brought individuals to look at what we do as a region, as a group, to push transportation forward for a number of people. So from my standpoint as one commissioner, I find that the organization as a whole has done a tremendous amount in the last year. And so I think we have seen a continuous amount of growth in every department, and I look forward to what the future has to hold for the fiscal 2019 year. But with that, we can move forward, I think, at this point. So, Mr. Gibson, why don't you take us into the scoring and how the scoring goes for this?
Sure, but first I'd just like to add a couple of financial facts, and Stephanie can nod acknowledgement. Year to date, our FY19 actual wages and benefits are down about 9% over the prior year. This is due to unfilled positions remaining vacant, as well as some staff retirements, but I kind of also view that as a positive. We work efficiently, we work hard, we really try to be mindful of the fact that we're spending public dollars, wages, overhead. When I was in the consulting world, the old saying was overhead, for every dollar of overhead, that's a dollar off the bottom line. I think our analogy here is every dollar of overhead is a dollar that can't go to a project, and we want dollars to go to projects. So, but being mindful of that, with respect to scoring, I would point out the lowest score that you could award the agency, which is 0.6, would represent a pool of only 3.9%. A board rating of 1.5 would have a total pool percent of 5.2. I would remind the commission, we do not have cost of living increases here. There is no separate COLA adjustment. Our wage pool for increases in salaries is strictly that comes from the scoring, from the percentage that comes from the board rating. If you have any questions on that methodology, I'm sure Stephanie would be more than happy to answer those. But I think I will say that the staff that works here at the RTC, works for me at the RTC, works very hard and they work very smart, and they do a lot with very little, and I'm very pleased with that. That's kind of my orientation, is to make sure that we are efficient and put as many dollars as we can to projects, so our private sector partners can get projects built that we, as the planners and engineers and staff, have helped define as in the public interest. With that, it's open for discussion by the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a sneaking suspicion that 7.1 was created for 7.2.
Oh, really?
But it was, and it was done very well, Michael. So, and Commissioner Jordan is correct. You forget everything that's been done throughout the year. So that was a stark reminder of the successes that we've had. With that being said, I think Mr. Lucy touched on all the good things Mr. Gibson did as well. So I would support a motion for a 1.5.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? I'll second that. I'll second that motion, and I agree with Mr. Mayor Smith that it's tremendous what this organization has done in the last year. So I would I continue with that. So I do have a motion and a second on the floor. Do I have any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ike. We appreciate it. Mr. Gibson, we are on to 7.3 legal issues.
Depending on how court calendars move, before one of the meetings this summer, I'd like to have an attorney-client session on the RTC pending litigation. So might
Okay.
not be next month, but perhaps July.
Okay. Well, we'll look for our calendars, and I'm sure Denise will keep us up to speed with that. All right, we will close legal issues, and we're on to public input. Is there any public comment? Anybody signed in? I don't have any cards. If you'd like to come speak, come on down, and we'll get you a card.
Hi, Rory McKinney. A couple of things, two good things and two bad things. The first good thing was Commissioner Harton talking about the impact fees, especially in the north, because my brother drives 2 to 3 times a week from the North Valley up to my dad's house in Silver Knolls, and then back from Silver Knolls down to UNR. So I agree with Commissioner Harton that kind of is low for the mileage. And the second good thing was the questions on the informational, the Arlington Bridge, and the possible automation payment. And the first bad thing is in Sparks or Mayor Smith on Pyramid and Tyler, where the last Larry's, and where it's in that shop store, that last Larry's store and JJ's, there's no signal. It's just a crosswalk. And if somebody gets hit, they can probably, that's negligible. They can come after you guys, probably end out as well, because that's an end out road. And the second bad thing is that last Tuesday, Mr. Joe Hart did an Ask Joe story on Ryan Callahan and the fact that he is homebound because his pavement, the front pavement, like you see a concrete area, like a concrete on the front, you know, you go into the street, the sidewalk area, it's just gravel, and that impacts his wheelchair where it gets gravel into his wheels, and that's an 8A violation because there's no concrete, it's just gravel. And if I understand that Joe Hart story, it's like it got annexed into the arena area, so that would fall under your guys' preview as well, or an 8A violation where the gravel got stuck in his wheel and he can't move around. And that kind of looks bad, especially if there's supposed to be a rumored developer coming in. And he looks and says, well, wait a minute. 88 person in a wheelchair can't get around any area, then why would I want to put my money into the area at all? Especially if it's just been annexed in the West Moana Plume area.
Thank you. Have you, any other public comment this morning? Seeing no further public comment, I'm going to close public comment, bring it back to the board. We are on to member items. Any further member items by the members? Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Gibson, I know I saw this, but I just, I want to try to keep this on the forefront. The widening of Eagle Canyon from Neighborhood Way up to West Calle de la Plata. I'm hoping that we're doing some studies on that, not just to widen the road over to Lemon Valley and create an access, and then create an access ultimately on La Posada out to the Tri-Center, but there's a real need now on a daily basis. And then also, and I know that this is an NDOT issue, but I want to keep this on the forefront, the widening of Pyramid Highway from essentially Egyptian out to the end of the Spanish Springs Valley. We have huge amounts of growth going on, and we really need to study that sooner rather than later to get it on our CIP. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Vice Chair Jordan.
No, I'm good.
You're good. One last thing I'd like to point out is, I'd like to acknowledge Miss Emma Crossman with Sierra Nevada SNC. She has been a true advocate for the Virginia Street project and has helped continue. I mean, Matt, it's always the forefront of the project, but I want to make sure that, Emma, you get the same amount of acknowledgement. Thank you for all the time and effort you've put into that project. I think the businesses and the public are very appreciative of all the time and effort you've put in that, so thank you. Nothing further. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.